Going on, Fanatics View, Ring TV. It's your boy, the primetime capper, Pop DiBiase, but this man calls me Jamil most of the time. My guy, the boss man himself, Doug Fischer, Ring Magazine, the Ring Magazine. Doug, there's only one, baby. There's only one. All right, Doug, what is your post-fight reaction to the lightweight unification for the females? I'm going to go through all three with you.
Okay, sure.
All right. What did you think of Katie tonight?
Well, first of all, I thought it was a hell of a fight. They thrilled the crowd. The crowd was on its feet, especially in the 10th round. She had a tough time in that last round. She was gassed. She took a lot of punishment. She dished out a lot of punishment. If you look at the face of Delphine Persoon, she looked like a gargoyle at the end of that fight. I had it even. I had it 5 rounds apiece. Obviously, the toughest fight of Katie Taylor's career. I think they got to run it back. They should run it back because it was extremely entertaining. I thought Taylor fought the wrong kind of fight. I think Taylor was the faster, more fluid athlete. She had the better footwork. She put her punches together better, but she stayed in the pocket too long. And sometimes she would back straight up against Persoon, and Persoon just walked her down, like Antonio Margarito style, taking hellacious shots, but delivering hellacious shots. And Persoon would work for 3 minutes of every round. And I think that's why a lot of people feel that Persoon should have won that fight. And I get that. Like I said, I had it 5 rounds apiece, and there were a couple close rounds where I scored, for Taylor that could have easily gone for Persoon, and vice versa too. There was a round or two where I scored it for Persoon, and I was thinking, Taylor put some combos on her ass, you know what I mean? Right. But it seemed like Persoon's punches were more effective than Katie's. Like Persoon took a better, even though her face got busted up, Persoon took a better punch than Katie. Katie would get her head snapped back like that. So definitely they got to run it back. It was controversial. But congratulations to Katie Taylor because she became the undisputed female lightweight champion and also the first Ring Magazine women's lightweight champion. That's a big deal.
That's an incredible moment for that young lady right there because she's the ring champion now. What did you think of the 168 ring champ, though? Caleb Smith, he was incredible tonight.
Yeah,
what do you think of that?
No ring rust, but, he was in there with a nationally smaller guy, a former WBO middleweight title holder, former WBA belt holder as well, guy who's fought everybody, guy who gets knocked down a lot but always gets up. People think that Hassan N'Dam has a bad chin, but I think his balance is bad because he gets dropped a lot. He gets dropped by heavy punchers like Peter Quillen, David Lemieux. I was ringside for that fight. I actually did the call for that fight on Fox Sports. And he took hellacious shots from Lemieux and kept fighting and was very competitive in both those fights. The rounds where he didn't get dropped, he was very competitive and probably won like the majority of those rounds against both Quillen and Lemieux. So Smith was in against a seasoned veteran, but a guy who's getting long in the tooth. The last time we saw him in against a world-class fighter, it was the Japanese Olympic champ, Murata. He'd won a controversial decision over Murata. They ran it back in a rematch, and Murata attacked the body and stopped him. And, so, obviously, N'Dam passed his prime, but he was taken out. He was taken out pretty decisively by Callum Smith. So Smith looked good. Smith had been out of the ring since September. I think it was September when he beat George Groves and won the World Boxing Super Series super middleweight tournament. Also won the Ring Magazine title with that. And he looks like the goods. I put him number 1. I think he's the best super middleweight out there. And I think it's saying something because the 168-pound division is very deep. You got Caleb Plant, who was like the stylist. He's a slick boxer. He's a southpaw in there. He's got the fast hands, the sweet hands. And then you got a monster in David Benavidez. He's scary. He's powerful. He's huge. He's a volume puncher. Right. Throws a lot of punches. He's young and he's still learning. You can see that, but he looked like a monster against Jillian Love. You were there in Dallas, right? Didn't
most definitely. Oh my goodness, man.
You know what? Benavidez versus Love kind of reminded me of Callum Smith against N'Dam. It's like this big, hulking guy, bigger against like a naturally smaller veteran, and it was no contest. It was over quickly, thankfully, because you didn't want to see the older guy get hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
And look, that's a great analogy right there. What do you think before we get into the Ruiz Joshua fight? We're gonna give him his props to see the champ now.
Yeah.
What do you think about the middleweight division in whole, 160, 168. Do you think it might be taken over back again as a good money division? They got some really
glamour
good
division.
champions.
Yeah. Well, unlike the heavyweight division and the welterweight division, it does look like all the belts can come together at middleweight because Canelo Alvarez has 3 major world titles. He's got the WBC, the WBA, he just won the IBF from Danny Jacobs. He's also considered the lineal middleweight champion, and he's the Ring Magazine champion. There's only one belt out there left, that's WBO belt held by Demetrius Andrade, who fights, I forget the guy's name, Maciej Sulecki, fights the Polish contender Sulecki late this month, I think June 29 in Providence, Rhode Island. So if he handles business there, he's in great position. That WBO title is like a lottery ticket. So he'd get that shot at Canelo Alvarez. If not an immediate shot at Canelo Alvarez, like, say in September or later this year, then, maybe he can fight Gennady Golovkin later this year. Maybe he could fight Jaime Munguia, who also fights on the zone. Maybe Munguia comes up in weight to middleweight and he fights him. I interviewed Andrade for an article that I wrote for Ring Magazine, the cover story for the next magazine. It's basically who's Canelo going to fight next. So it's got Canelo on the cover, and it's got Andrade, Triple G, Munguia, and Callum Smith, because Canelo can go up in weight as well. And Golden Boy mentioned Callum Smith's name after the Canelo-Jacobs fight. So I talked to all those guys, and Andrade, he talked the most shit. He was kind of like, he was the one guy saying, I don't think Canelo really wants to fight me. I don't think these guys really want to fight me. But he said, I'm going to keep fighting contenders until they have to notice me, because the fans are going to notice me. So I like that attitude, that he wants to stay busy now, and he has been busy now. This will be his 3rd fight in 8 months, and he needed that because he'd been kind of inactive, in past years. So it's good for him to get active again. He's got the DAZN platform. It's just good for him as a fighter to stay busy. He'll get sharper and all that. So, he's a player, but there's a potential to where we can get, at least by next year, like an undisputed middleweight champ. Because I do think there's a lot of pressure. If Golovkin wins and looks good against Steve Rolls next Saturday here at Madison Square Garden, I do think there's going to be a lot of pressure from DAZN for Canelo and Triple G to run it back a 3rd time. That's just a huge fight, and they want that. That's why they signed these guys. They want to see that 3rd match. They're going to get a lot of subscriptions off it. It's going to help them out a lot. So maybe that's what's going to happen later this year. It's just Canelo, Triple G 3. But Andrade's out there, and he's waiting for the winner of that fight.
All right, perfect. And now let's get down to the main event. Andy Ruiz, undisputed world champion. Well, he's missing the belt, but regardless, he got 4 of them.
He's a unified champ. Yeah,
he got 4 of them.
Right.
What did you think of his performance?
He's got the IBF, the WBA, and the WBO. Right. The only other sanctioning organization belt is the WBC, the green belt held by Deontay Wilder.
Right.
So he's almost undisputed, but not quite.
Explain the IBO, then why would you consider?
Yeah. I mean, you could count the IBO if you want to say there's 5 major titles. You can. The Ring Magazine doesn't recognize the IBO or the WBA's regular title.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I respect them. I respect the IBO. Like they're a little bit different than the other ones. It's like instead of like a ratings panel, they've got like a computer system, kind of how they rank them. And a lot of champions, a lot of high-level champions in the past have held the IBO belt, like Vladimir Klitschko, and I think Lennox Lewis was a big proponent of the IBO. So, yeah. And also, I think, didn't Gennady Golovkin for a while have the IBO belt?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, it's a belt.
Yeah, it's a title, yeah. So if you want to say that Andy Ruiz has 4 belts, he does. But he doesn't have the green belt from Mexico City. He doesn't have the WBC belt yet. Wilder's got that.
And do you feel that might be the most important belt in the heavyweight division?
Well, whatever belt is just outstanding. Whatever belt is out there, if you want to be, undisputed, you got to win that title. So for Canelo Alvarez, I imagine that WBO belt that Andrade holds, that's important. It should be if he wants to be undisputed. If you're Andy Ruiz or whoever wins the Andy Ruiz Anthony Joshua rematch, if they do an immediate rematch, the winner of that fight, if they want to be undisputed, they got to fight Deontay Wilder. If Wilder still holds the WBC title, after that, Wilder's got to get through Luis Ortiz in their rematch, and then he was saying that he's going to do the rematch with Tyson Fury after that. So whoever wins those rematches, whoever has that green belt, I mean, that's what boxing needs. It needs these guys who hold the belts to fight each other. When you get the undisputed champion, it just creates a lot of excitement. It creates clarity in the sport. and people take the sport more seriously. You know, the general sports media, mainstream media, starts to pay more attention to boxing, and that helps bring new fans. Because as you've seen, like tonight, when boxing's good, it's amazing.
Right.
Like that upset was tremendous. Those knockdowns and everything. It's just, you know, there was this. Madison Square Garden was sold out, and we got treated to a great knockout by Callum Smith, a great fight with Taylor Persone, and a tremendous upset with Ruiz over Joshua.
And real quick, just my last question for you. We were able to interview Ammo Williams earlier, Austin Ammo Williams from Houston.
Like him.
What do you think of him?
I think he's somebody to watch. He's exciting. He's explosive. He's now 3-0. And he just seems to have a lot of talent. He seems like a really special personality, too. He was a good interview, right? You enjoyed talking to him. That's kind of rare. I'm not just saying among boxers, among athletes in general. A lot of times, you're tremendous athletes. They kind of say the same thing, you know. So you like guys like Andy Ruiz, who are just kind of regular guys and affable. But then you also like guys like Williams, who, you know, seems like there's a lot going on up there. And he's just kind of a special personality and all. So if you haven't heard, he's a middleweight prospect out of Houston, Texas. He's somebody to watch, even though he's just 3-0. And a bit of a latecomer to the sport, right?
Right.
Yeah, a bit of a latecomer, but he's got talent. Got talent, man. And he's explosive, one of them type dudes, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, awesome, man. He could have possibly been an Olympian, but, you know, they skip ahead. You know how it goes with the Olympics and everything. But it's 1 a.m. in New York City. We're at Madison Square Garden. They telling us to wrap it up. I'm with the boss himself, The Ring Magazine. Your boy Pop DiBiase, the primetime capper, signing out for Fanatics View and Ring TV.